I'll admit it, I was late. Everyone was ranting and raving about Game of Thrones, and I thought I was too good for it. I had vague ideas of it being too violent and too sexist and too medieval for me, whatever that means. But no, literally, I thought that I wouldn't find the time period of the fantasy world compelling, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Late last year, I fell in love with the book Red Rising by Pierce Brown and consistently saw the politics and action in that and compared it to Game of Thrones. And I thought, there's only a certain number of times I can recommend this book to people while comparing it to a series I haven't watched. So, in the year of our Lord 2025, I gave it a go. Well done. The idea of the houses, the long-form character building, the world building. It's fascinating watching the dynamics of the houses moving against each other, the politics in the court and throughout the land. I love that with a big ensemble cast, you get to see so many different characters and moving parts. People are constantly switching allegiances, and you're seeing new sides of them. As events unfold, they have to react to new and challenging situations, which is really interesting. I was surprised that I ended up really enjoying the medieval setting of the show, probably because of how fascinating the political dynamics are. I found that I didn't even really need the fantasy element. It wasn't there that much in the beginning anyway, but when it did come into play in the form of White Walkers or dragon eggs, it just enhanced the show that much more and enhanced the world building that much more. And the world building in this show is truly great. I loved slowly getting to know the different houses and their dynamics, as well as how this world functions and what its history is. That is my brief, no spoiler review. Now, since this is the first season, let's go through what the premise of the show is with as few spoilers as possible, and then get right into a full spoiler review. Game of Thrones is a fantasy drama TV series developed by HBO and based on the book series A Song of Fire and Ice by George R. R. Martin. The show is set in a fantasy world in a medieval time period, mostly on the continent of Westeros, home of the Seven Kingdoms. Season 1 opens on the House Stark in their home of Winterfell in the north. The lord of this land, Ned Stark, is asked by the king of Westeros, his close friend, Robert Baratheon, to come to the seat of his power, the city of King's Landing in the south, to serve as Hand of the King. Robert fears the machinations of those in his court and city since the previous king's hand has just been killed. Ned reluctantly agrees and moves south to King's Landing with his daughters Sansa and Arya, leaving the rest of the Starks, his wife Catelyn, and sons Robb, Bran, and Rickon at Winterfell. Meanwhile, his bastard son, Jon Snow, heads north to the Wall to join the Night's Watch, an army that mans the northern wall of the continent, defending it from outsiders, including the zombie-like White Walkers. Other than the Starks, the Lannisters are the most important house in the show. Cersei Lannister is the queen, married to Robert. Her twin brother Jaime is a knight known as the Kingslayer, having killed the previous king in the rebellion that gave Robert the throne. Their younger brother, Tyrion Lannister, is a dwarf, often called the Imp, and is therefore a bit of an outsider in the family. Cersei has children with her husband Robert, and their oldest son is Prince Joffrey. The families plan to one day have Ned's daughter Sansa married to him. Oh, yeah, and another storyline follows the remnants of House Targaryen, the rulers of Westeros before Robert took the throne. Only two members of the house remain, and they are resourceless and on another continent. Esoros, if you were wondering. But let's be real, only one of those two really matters, and that is Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons. Alright, here is your full-on spoiler review. This is your warning to get out of here after liking and subscribing if you don't want spoilers. Now, a lot happens in this first season, and I can't mention every single event since this isn't a recap, so I'll talk in broad strokes about the characters and the plot. To begin with, I think that House Stark made such great main characters. I loved rooting for them. Ned, Arya, and Robb were some of my favorite characters in the season, and I think that Sansa and Bran were also really great. I'd characterize them as like ones to watch in that I think they will probably just become better and better characters as the show goes on. There's a lot of interesting side characters too, so it's not just the Starks I'm interested in. Some other characters that captured my attention were Varys, the spy master of King's Landing, and Renly Baratheon, the king's younger brother, who was convinced by his lover that he would make a much better and more beloved king. There's also Tyrion Lannister, who was a real standout. Let's just go through my list of favorite characters for this season. And remember, this is just for this season. They're in no particular order, except they are in like a first tier and a second tier. So I'd say first tier is Ned Stark, Arya Stark, Renly Baratheon, and Tyrion Lannister. And second tier, just like slightly below that first tier, is Robb Stark, Sansa Stark, Bran Stark, Jon Snow, Varys, and Daenerys Targaryen. The show also had some spectacularly hateable characters, which is a sign of a great show, and some great villains. Some of the characters I found most dislikable were obviously right off the bat Joffrey Baratheon. Also dislikable were Robert Baratheon, Cersei Lannister, and um, maybe the worst character actually is Viserys Targaryen. He was just an atrocious person. Now, there are many different plot lines in the show. I'm just going to give a brief overview. The main plot lines can be divided into kind of four sections. There's the Starks left behind in Winterfell, the Starks and Lannisters at King's Landing, then Daenerys Targaryen with the Dothraki in Easteros, and Jon Snow at the Wall with the Night's Watch. So, for someone watching this for the first time as a complete outsider, they bring you into this world in such a great way by giving you the point of view of this honorable house that is different from the others because it's set apart to the north and because it's actually honorable. You're given not only Ned Stark to follow in this story, but all his different children who are so unique. I just want to quickly go through each of them and the premise of their storyline. So you have the bastard son, Jon Snow, who is pushed to the side and is going off to join the Night's Watch far in the north at the Wall. There's Robb Stark, the oldest, who, while his father is gone in King's Landing, he's the Lord of Winterfell. And then when Ned dies, he has to deal with the fallout with the Lannisters, and he becomes the king in the north. And he was very successful in waging war against the Iron Throne and surprised all the people he was fighting against. Then there's Sansa, who wants more than anything to become a lady and a queen, and that's what she will one day become as she's set to marry Prince Joffrey. And she's really happy about doing that and even sticks to that desire really closely, even as we discover over the course of the season what a horrible monster Joffrey is. And then there's Sansa's younger sister, Arya, who is the complete opposite of her. She's a tomboy who wants to learn how to fight. And before he leaves for the Wall, her brother Jon gives her a sword that she names Needle. And when she's in King's Landing, her father gets her lessons with the swords master. It's a really great storyline considering the position women are usually in this time period and show. And Arya manages to escape capture at the end of the season after her father is killed and is on the run, and then she's on the run. Bren is one of the youngest Starks and loves climbing. However, that is brought to a swift end at the end of episode 1 when he's pushed from the top of a tower by Jaime Lannister. Bren must then come to terms with losing the use of his legs. And he also begins to have prophetic visions, so that's really cool. And despite his young age, he is the Stark left in charge of Winterfell when Robb has to leave for battle later in the season. And that is just the Starks. The intrigue of the court and small council in King's Landing is very compelling, especially as Ned unravels the conspiracy of why his predecessor was killed. Ned is a man of honor amongst a court of liars who are playing a very complicated and deadly game of power and politics. And his honor is ultimately his undoing when he trusts the wrong person and is betrayed by Littlefinger. But it's really interesting throughout the season to see his honor and strong character juxtaposed against the other people in the city and in the council. I really thought that Ned would somehow survive, even when he was branded a traitor or a treasonist, I guess. But that wasn't in the cards. Even with Sansa doing everything she could to save him and going along with the Lannisters' plans, Joffrey's cruelty and lust for dominance and blood is insatiable. And so, with him now king, he has Ned executed for treason. And Ned was just a spectacular character to watch. I really enjoyed seeing him, and he will definitely be missed. But the impact his death has on the story and his children is very widespread and compelling. It made such a great twist, too, because he was essentially the main character of the show. So we end the season with Westeros greatly divided. Joffrey is on the throne in King's Landing, but both of Robert's brothers are attempting to claim the throne. Meanwhile, Robb Stark has claimed the title of King of the North, and is very successfully fighting Joffrey's forces, who are led by Tywin Lannister, the patriarch of House Lannister. Tywin appoints Tyrion as the new King's Hand at the end of the season, which will be really interesting to watch, as he's generally a bit of a miscreant and a scoundrel, probably would describe himself that way. But he has much more moral fortitude than the other Lannisters and actually cares for the Starks, unlike all the other Lannisters. So it'll be interesting to see him in this new position. And then following Tyrion's journey throughout the season was very enjoyable. He went a lot of different places, but Peter Dinklage plays the character amazingly, and I enjoyed watching just everything he did. Also pretty cool watching Jon Snow learn the way of the Night's Watch at the Wall. I really don't have much to say about it other than I love Jon Snow, and ghost killing the White Walkers was sick as fuck. I can't wait to see more of Jon. And then moving on to Daenerys, I'm sure if you were in an English class, you could write a whole English essay through a feminist lens, examining the way Daenerys is treated in this storyline. She obviously starts off undergoing horrible treatment at the hands of her brother and is married off to Khal Drogo. And what starts as a very gross relationship evolves into actual love for them in a very Stockholm Syndrome way. I'm sure there's much more to say on this storyline and to analyze if I wanted to go in depth, but I don't want to go into depth on any of the storylines here. But I just wanted to say that I loved the change in Daenerys throughout the course of the season and her kind of gaining power and finding herself, even in the difficult position she was in. And seeing her emerge from the flames at the end of the season as the Mother of Dragons was spectacular and a great way to pay off everything that she went through. So, rapid fire, I'll leave you with some of my favorite moments or storylines from the season. The family having pet direwolves, insanely sick. The dynamics of the small council, really interesting. Learning to love Tyrion Lannister, even though I didn't expect too much from him at the beginning. You go through so much with him, and he has a better, as I said, moral fortitude than some of the other characters. I really enjoyed seeing the conflict for the throne after Robert died. Robb's surprising success as a military leader. Bren's recovery from his injury. Everything to do with both Ned and Arya was great. They're great characters. And the position that Sansa is in is very interesting, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And then finally, I just have to say that Joffrey makes a spectacularly cruel villain. So he plays that role really well. And also, special shout out to them mentioning the title of the show in dialogue in like episode 4 or something.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
When Cersei talks about the quote-unquote game of